to start out with high energy. And the title of our message is Becoming the Hero of Your Life, Part 1. Okay? And one of my favorite kind of stories to read is about explorers in Antarctic, in Africa. I just really get energized and inspired when I read about explorers. Now, most of us have heard of Stanley and Livingstone, where Stanley went throughout Africa, found Dr. Livingstone and said, Dr. Livingstone, I presume. I learned that in grade school. But this is how he got to Dr. Livingstone, which I didn't learn. And I just want you to imagine something, okay? Becoming the hero of your own life. Imagine this. Imagine for a moment that you are Stanley. Early one morning, you emerge from your tent in the Ituri rainforest in Congo. It's dark. It has been dark for months. Your stomach, long since ruined by parasites, recurrent diseases, and massive doses of quinine and other medicines, is even worse shape than usual. You and your men have been reduced to eating berries, roots, fungi, grubs, caterpillars, ants, and slugs, when you're lucky enough to find them. Oh God, thank you so much. I found a slug! Woo! All right, we can eat tonight. Okay, dozens of people were so crippled from hunger, disease, injuries, and festering sores that they had to be left at a spot in the forest grimly referred to as starvation camp, where they just died. You've taken the healthier ones ahead to look for food, but they've been dropping dead along the way. And there's still no food to be found. But as of this morning, you're still not dead. What do you do? What do you do? What would you do if you were in this situation? Now, many of us are not in an extreme situation like this, you know, but what do you do? And I can't really imagine myself what I would do. Do you know what? I would totally trust God in this situation. I would say, God, I can't go on. I have no more energy. Most of my friends, my men have died. I just can't. I'm sick. It looks like I'm not going to make it. God, if you're real, help me. I want to put my trust in you. I need that extra power. That's probably what I would do. How do I know it? Because I've done it so many times. So to become the hero of your life, you must totally trust God. And I'm extreme when I say totally trust God, because it's better to set your sights higher. You might come out a little lower, but if you set your sights lower than the beginning, you'll come out even lower. So that's why I like these extreme words, totally. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 8 to 11, Paul says something that most of us can relate to. We don't want you in the dark, friends, about how hard it was when all this came down on us in the Asia province. It was so bad, we didn't think we were going to make it. We felt like we'd been sent to death row, that it was all over for us. As it turned out, it was the best thing that it could have happened to us. Instead of trusting in our own strength or wits or intelligence to get out of it, we were forced to trust God totally. Not a bad idea, since He's the God who raises the dead. Now, I want to ask a question. I love taking scripture that sometimes it's just too religious sounding and so on, but kind of make it come alive in our hearts. Can you think of a time in your life that you were forced to totally trust God? Raise your hand if you've been there. You were in a circumstance, maybe like Stanley was, maybe not eating grubs, but eating other things, or drinking other things, or injecting other things. Forced to totally rely on, trust God. And what was the outcome when you did that? Just go back into your mind and think of those times where you thought you were just going to not make it, that there was no way, the exit lights were turned off. You just couldn't see how you were going to get out of that situation. So you were forced to, just like atheists and foxholes, you were forced to totally trust God as a last resort. What happened? Do you know, I went over every time in my life, many times, where I was forced to totally trust God. Do you know the outcome was better than I ever imagined? I remember having no money once. I remember being curled up in a fetal position, totally depressed, $600 left in the bank in America, which doesn't go very far. Melanie was praying over me. I was resisting her prayers. I said, no, I don't want your prayers. And we have this kind of isolationist tendency. And, she's singing over me. And I'm just like dying inside. I have no energy. And then something in me, I was forced to totally trust God. Or I knew I couldn't manage my life. So I just cried out to God. And when I did that, literally, I experienced a mini resurrection. And in that day, miracles happened, things happened. I could be here for hours telling you what happened when I was forced to totally trust God. Now, would I say it was the best thing that ever happened to me when I was forced to trust God? Yes. Could I say that I resisted it and I was scared? Yes. But I just went back into my mind with our son's leukemia. It just goes on and on. I mean, desperate situation where I was forced to trust God totally. And the outcome was always better than I expected or imagined. The outcome was like, wow, you know what? This is the best thing that has ever happened to me. Even though, I was forced to eat those grubs and those caterpillars, metaphorically speaking, and I saw no way out of the darkness of the rainforest like Stanley did, but God led me out, and it was actually an outcome that was better than ever before. Just go back and review your past situations where you just felt like, I can't do this. I just can't be the hero of my life. I can be the villain of my life. I can think of a ton of things. I can just watch my phone for 3 hours down. I can think of how to be the villain of my life. That's no problem. Most of us can relate to sabotaging ourselves, giving into fear, OCD, all of this stuff. We have no problems being the villain of our life. But being the hero of our life, that's something that's completely different. So let me just read this one more time, okay? We don't want you in the dark, friends, about how hard it was when all of this was happening to us in the province of Asia. Don't you like the Apostle Paul on his honesty? Well, Christians shouldn't have problems. We're more than conquerors. Okay? And he goes on. It was so bad, guys, that we didn't think we were going to make it. Meaning, we thought we were going to die. We felt like we'd been sent to death row. That it was all over for us. As it turned out, it was the best thing that could have happened. Instead of trusting in our own strength or wits or intelligence to get out of it, we were forced to trust God totally. Not a bad idea, since He's the God who raises the dead, present tense. So I can honestly say that every time I was forced to trust God totally, that the outcome was better than I expect or imagine. And in retrospect, in spite of the pain, like when our son almost died, in spite of that, I can go back and say, God, honestly, this was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I trusted you in that time, and you have never let me down. Think about it. Just think about your own life. Has God ever let you down when you've totally trusted Him in a situation? Okay? I use this word, totally trusted Him. And I'm going to explain what trust is. So, I want to talk about 3 amazing benefits of trusting God totally. Now, I've never heard a message. Do you know when I Google this? Of course, I go to Harvard University, Psychology Today, everything. I like to learn as much about this word trust as possible. But you know what I found? That the secular world, the non-Christian world, talks more about the benefits of trust than Christians do. Yeah. And I've never heard a message on the benefits of trust. What happens when you move from distrust to trust? What are the benefits? What's in it for me when I trust God totally? So when we see the value of something, when we know what it's going to do to us, man, we go for that. So today, I want to talk about becoming, the hero of your life by totally trusting in God. Now, according to one psychologist, she says this: when there is an emerging sense of trust, a person can develop a solid sense of self, identity, confidence, an ability to believe that they can make a difference in the world, that they're valued. Without trust in your life, what one may experience instead is excessive doubt about specific situations and an overall sense of fear and anxiety about the world. Everything will be filtered through that. So if you can move from that distrustful state, distrust is a state, to one of trust, and find the right person who's not going to let you down. When I first came to Marbella, I met this Swedish woman, and she was my age at the time, I guess, and she had a beautiful dog, and she says, "I don't trust men." And then she proceeded to tell me about all the times that she lost trust in men in her life. And she was so angry, and she said, "The only person I trust is my dog right here. I will never be involved with a man ever again, because I can't trust them." And she was so angry, and I could just see this, and she'll never be happy. Because she can't regain this trust. She's going to have this distrustful zone all of her life. So I want to talk about these three things. And number one, trusting God totally defeats your inner villain. So many people that I know, they are not the hero of their own lives. They're the villain of their own lives. And they're doing a great job at it. They're experts in it. They're so good. They get it, it's just like, whoa, look at me. Man, I'm a great villain. Woo! And that's unfortunate. So trusting God totally will defeat your inner villain. I think trust, or being the hero of your own life, it's largely an inside job, isn't it?
Yes.
It's an inside job. For example, the 12 spies that Moses sent out. He sent them out to the promised land. And the 12 spies, they all saw the same thing. They all wanted the same thing. They saw the incredible, delicious fruit, but they also saw the military fortifications, the giant people, and then they come back and report their findings. And then 10 of them say, "It's impossible. We'll never do it." Don't you know? Everybody that has a diagnosis like this, it's impossible. I have to live with it. They made every excuse. But then only 2 people, Joshua and Caleb, said, "It's going to be really hard. But with God, and because we trust in God, it's possible. We're going to give it our best, even though the majority say it's impossible." So you have one event, but 2 stories. One event, but 2 interpretations. 2 stories about that event. So becoming a hero is a massive, massive adjustment in our mind, moving from a state of distrusting God and ourselves to a state of trust. So what Melanie read, she didn't know I was going to quote this one, in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart." See that word, totally? All your heart. "And lean not on your own understanding." That is your feelings, your emotions, your rationalizing. "In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight." In other words, he'll give you that life that you desire, that satisfaction that you desire, that what you dream about. He'll make your path straight. But first of all, there has to be that essential trust. And if you look at your feelings, I think it's so easy to lean towards your own understanding. Let's look at this, and let's break down the cliche of this. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, with all your emotions, and lean not on your own understanding. There have been so many times when I've leaned on my own understanding, when I've trusted my feelings more than God. Okay? When I've given in to my feelings, when I've said things to people based on my feelings that had nothing to do with reality and everything to do with my history of how I was brought up. And I was just filtering it through that. And that makes you mental. So when I was 9 years old, I had to be sent away to boarding school because my feelings were absolutely being villainous and ruining me, and I was leaning into my emotions and trusting my emotions and my feelings much more than God, as if they were facts. So really, we develop power. You know what I do? Every time that I have a feeling that brings fear or discord or anger or takes my peace away, I examine that feeling and I ask that feeling questions. And I was saying, Kurt, why are you feeling that way? What's going on? Why do you feel jealousy or fear, or that you can't do it, or, I'll never be like this? What's going on, Kurt? Why are you feeling like that? And then I start exploring those feelings. And I say, you know what? That's not of God. I'm going to trust God and what He says about me rather than what that feeling says about me. I've always done this. And this has helped me big time in my life. So I want to look at this book right here. It's a Coda book. Okay? If you're codependent, this is absolutely wonderful. Codependence Anonymous. And I just saw it on my bookshelf today. And don't you love when someone tells you something about yourself, like, hey Kurt, you're codependent. Oh, I am? Oh, wow, that's so great. Because now I can be the hero of my life. I have something, this is wonderful news, that I'm codependent, and that I'm like, whew, this is great. I have something to work with now. I know what territory, and God, how am I going to get out of this codependency? Okay? And it's so similar to the Bible. It says the 12 steps of Codependence Anonymous, kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous. We admitted we were powerless over others, that our lives had become unmanageable. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. And I'm playing around with the language here a little bit, not my favorite language, but they're basically saying the same thing that Paul said. He said, my life became unmanageable in the province of Asia. I felt like I was under this, but this happened to show me that I could not do it in my own power, but I had to do it in God's power. And it was actually better for me that this happened. So perhaps Bill Wilson from the AA got it from that verse. I don't know. But I just want to read some villainous thoughts that would come in and wreck your day. Here we go. It's fun. So imagine if you come into a codependent meeting, okay? And somebody said to you, I think you're a little codependent. And you said, no, I'm not. And you come into this meeting, and here's some thoughts. Here's some possible villains. So I'm coming into my first CODA meeting, which I've never been to, but I'd like to go to one. And somebody reads out, what's going on in my mind. And they say, Kurt, there's denial patterns. And they have difficulty identifying feelings. Minimize, alter, or deny their feelings. Perceive themselves as being completely unselfish, dedicated to the well-being of others. Have difficulty making decisions. Judge their thoughts, words, and actions harshly as never being good enough, or embarrassed to receive recognition, praise, or gifts, or unable to ask others to meet their needs or wants. Value other people's approval or their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors over self-approval. Wow. Do not perceive themselves as lovable or worthwhile. How many people have I met? Compromise their values' integrity to avoid rejection and other people's anger. Are very sensitive to others' feelings and assume the same feelings. or extremely loyal, remaining in harmful situations for too long, place a higher value on others' opinions and feelings, and are afraid to express differing viewpoints or feelings, put aside personal interests and hobbies to do what others want, accept sex as a substitute for love, believe most others are incapable of taking care of themselves, attempt to convince others what they should think or feel. How many emails have I received like this? Become resentful when others refuse their offers of help. Freely offer advice and guidance without being asked. Lavish gifts and favors on those that they care about. So imagine if you go into a meeting and you can identify, you should be jumping up and down with joy. Because it's like God is pinpointed and saying, you know, Kurt, man, you know, you're feeling this. You've identified the villain. And the only way you can overcome it in this book, actually, is saying, my life is unmanageable. I am codependent. I am an alcoholic. I am jealous. I am whatever it is. You have to confess it boldly and say, I am this in the moment. And I want to be the hero of my life. And I want to conquer this. And I don't want to be codependent anymore. And then people in the group say, well, Kurt, you have to confess that you're codependent. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Do you want to hear that? Yes, I am. I'm not really. Yes, I am. Okay? And then, Kurt, you need a higher power. No, I don't. No, I don't. I can manage it myself. I don't need this meeting. I'm just going to go out of here and do it. I don't need your help. And then suddenly we have all of these arguments, and I'll never be the hero of my life. This is why Paul said, I'm going to read it one more time. It says, it was so bad in the province of Asia that we didn't think we were going to make it. We felt like we'd been sent to death row, that it was all over for us. As it turned out, it was the best thing that could have happened. Instead of trusting in our own strength or wits to get out of it, we were forced to trust God totally. Okay, put this book down. So what's happening here is when we want to become the hero of our own life, we have to think like a hero. We can't think like a villain. If any of us here, if you've experienced those thoughts, I don't know if you're trying to justify them. I don't know. Maybe you've identified yourself as codependent right now. I don't know. Maybe you're thinking of something else, and you just have to confess it. You know, if you confess your sins, He is faithful and just and will not only forgive us, but cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Okay? This is why I like AA. I went to the convention because it's an organization where people have to conquer their inner demons or they simply don't make it. I like it because people have to change in order to stay alive. They're desperate to change. And I think many times, you know, we just kind of coast along in life and we don't really say, you know what? I want to conquer these inner demons. I want to trust God to do such a profound work in me that I will be depressed no longer, that I will be codependent no longer, I will be jealous no longer. But only way you can do that is by trusting God totally. Number 2, trusting God totally transforms your feelings. This is what got me. It just, for example, in Romans 15, verse 13, it says, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in Him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. So it's saying, if I develop a close relationship with God, and I trust Him, that I will be overflowing with joy, with hope, with power. That's why, you know, so many times in Christian circles, it's used in a negative thing. Oh, you don't trust God enough. I can say, Jenny, you're not trusting God enough. And I put it in a negative sense. But when you show what happens when you trust somebody, you trust your husband. I trust my wife implicitly. I know that she would take a bullet for me. Do you know how much joy that gives me, that I can trust Melanie? But what if I couldn't? What if she was out there cheating on me and I had this ambivalent relationship and I didn't really know if she loved me? I would be living. What if I thought that about God? But when you know that you can completely trust somebody 100%, and you know you can trust God, suddenly the peace you wanted, the joy you wanted, the freedom you wanted, it all comes rushing into your life. I'm a weird character because even before I was a Christian, I trusted God. I just, something in me just said, God, I don't know who you are fully, but I trust that you will reveal yourself to me. And I've had all my life, I think, just a quiet trust, that things are going to be okay. I've resisted things. I've tried to do things in my power. I've isolated myself.